His statement also has something that stood out to me. He says he believes culture and upbringing play a role as to whether or not people cheat, but he doesn't think it's proper to label an entire group of people as cheaters.
So what's the university been doing about the situation?
The university said it couldn't comment on this ongoing investigation, but officials did say they investigate all accusations of cheating or racial discrimination, and they don't tolerate either. The university initially asked David Weber to stop teaching while they investigated the discrimination complaints, but he's back in the classroom now. But neither Weber nor Wu seem happy about how the university handled the situation. Wu says they could have done more to let students know about their rights, and Weber feels like his efforts to uphold academic integrity weren't supported by the university.
Was this common? Is the University of Maryland the only place where Chinese students have been accused of cheating?
Actually, Matt, we're seeing these incidents spring up in multiple institutions. Last year, the Los Angeles Times ran a story about a similar issue. Professors at the University of California, Santa Barbara talked about cheating as a major concern among Chinese students. And a Chinese student group at the school also felt targeted by the way the professor addressed the issue. There have been research studies in other institutions as well, revealing similar tensions. And keep in mind that though the overall number of international students entering the U.S. has slowed down, the number from China continuously ticks up. And this is changing the look of universities. And in order to ease these cultural tensions, there may need to be some changes.
Well, what sort of things can universities do to ease the tensions between international students and professors?
Well, actually, there is one university that's getting pretty proactive about this. The University of Arizona has accepted a lot of international students from China, and they hired their first director of global curriculum this year. The person in the position is Gabriela Valdez. She teaches professors how to teach international students. Valdez told me she looks for little ways in the curriculum that it can be tweaked to help international students feel included. The University of Maryland also has some classes professors can opt into, but it's not as in-depth as the University of Arizona.
WAMU education reporter Jenny Abamu, thanks for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you for having me.
알렉산드리아까지 가고 있습니다.
You're listening to Morning Edition on WAMU 88.5. It's 38 degrees now in Northwest Washington at 6:50. 38 in Lanham as well. 36 degrees in Fairfax. Stay with us later this morning at 9. After Morning Edition, it's the BBC News Hour. International local stories. That's from 9 to 10 this morning on WAMU. And this evening, listen for All Things Considered.
The summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wraps up its final day. So, was it a success?
If it makes North Korea to allow in some sunshine and some cooperation, my view is that's actually a step in the right direction.
Plus, the latest on Michael Cohen's testimony before Congress this afternoon on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Listen for All Things Considered this evening from 4 to 8 at WAMU, including business news on Marketplace from 6 to 6:30.
Support for WAMU comes from Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, an association of independent, locally operated Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies believe everyone should have access to health care, no matter who you are or where you live. Shepard Mullen, a global law firm with 850 lawyers serving the needs of government contractors, private equity funds, corporations, and digital media companies in DC and beyond. Our mission is your success. More at shepardmullen.com.
It's 6:52. It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Rachel Martin. Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any psychiatric diagnosis. This week, one organization is trying to spread the word that eating disorders affect all of us. From NPR's Code Switch podcast, Shireen Marisol Meraji has more.
Carla Mosley wants you to know that people with eating disorders look like her too.
I'm a woman of color, and I certainly didn't know that people like me had eating disorders. It seemed like it was a white, rich, female, adolescent disorder.
Only one of those identifiers fits Mosley, who's black, and binged and purged for years. She also struggled with obsessive thoughts about food.
I've experienced so many holidays and social events where I wasn't present with people because I was focusing on what was on the table, what was going in my mouth. Then once I ate it, is it going to make me fat the next day?
Food haunted her at times. Food comforted her at others, and when she threw food up, she says it was actually a way to purge pent-up sadness and anxiety. She says there was a period in her life where she was throwing up every single night. Mosley's an actor. She's been a regular on the daytime soap The Bold and the Beautiful since 2013. But a decade before that, she was working on a kids show in Australia.
At night, I was doing this really violent thing by myself up all night, and then during the day, I was like smiling and entertaining children. And it was this very strange Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde moment. And I was kind of like barely keeping it together. And then my aunt passed away.
Her aunt was like a second mom, and when she got that news, the very first thing she did was run to the bathroom to throw up. Her colleagues were aware this was going on and begged her to get help, which she did. And speaking honestly about her eating disorder and her recovery is Mosley's way of giving back. She says she was lucky to have colleagues who supported her, and she knows not everyone has that luxury. So she's using her platform as a black actor with 60,000 Instagram followers.
You know, my picture shows up in their feed every day, and that's a wide range of people. I'm on the #1 soap opera in the world. It's possible that by my telling my story,
오늘은
people can
평상시보다
help.
늦게
Charlie Mosley's an
출발했는데
ambassador for the largest nonprofit in the U.S. helping
막히지가
people
않네요.
affected by eating disorders, the National Eating Disorder Association, or NEDA. This week marks its annual Eating Disorder Awareness campaign, and this year's theme is inclusivity. The tagline, "Come as you are."
And one of our big goals with ambassadors is to really carry forward this message of come as you are.
That's the head of NEDA, Claire Misko. Ambassadors like Carla are sharing their stories this week, and Misko wants other people to do the same using the hashtag #ComeAsYouAre. She says 30 million Americans have struggled with an eating disorder at some point in their lives, and that number is probably higher because the stereotype of who has an eating disorder affects how we talk about eating disorders, who seeks treatment, who gets treatment, and how they're treated. Misko hopes people of all genders and racial and ethnic backgrounds will participate.
It's really about, again, celebrating community and busting these myths that prevent and have prevented so many people from coming forward.
Another myth. People with eating disorders are all thin. Shavice Turner, who founded the Binge Eating Disorder Association in 2008, says that's just not true. She struggled with both binge eating disorder and atypical anorexia. That's when you restrict your food intake and your calories, but you don't look super thin.
I have always lived in a higher weight body, and so part of what the greater eating disorders community back in 2008 was not doing was really representing people in higher weight bodies with eating disorders.
Binge eating disorder wasn't recognized on the American Psychiatric Association's diagnostic manual back then. That's something Turner worked on changing, and that officially happened in 2013. Now that there's more research on binge eating, she says demographic data is emerging.
The Latino community actually has the highest rates of binge eating disorder, and they are followed by the Black community.
A researcher told me that Latinas she worked with who crossed the border from Central America and Mexico had gone without food for so long they started binge eating once they finally had it. So food insecurity can be a trigger, trauma can also be a trigger, as well as anxiety and depression. But most of the studies on what causes eating disorders have been done by white researchers on white women with diagnostic tools designed by white researchers for white women. Turner, who's white, wanted to address this lack of representation in her own way. So she invited an equity expert, who's black, to speak at the Binge Eating Disorder Association's annual conference a few years ago. She says that expert, Desiree Attaway, got up on stage
and she said, I just want to let y'all know that this is a room full of white supremacy. And until that point, I had not really realized just how white our organizations were and just how much we were not listening.
Shavice Turner has a new job now. She's at the National Eating Disorder Association. She joined forces with Claire Misko at NEDA to, quote, unify the eating disorder community. And Misko acknowledges they have some work ahead when it comes to being more inclusive.
As a white woman,
I'm sort of putting forward that typical picture of who struggles. NITA doesn't have a Latinx ambassador yet, but they reached out to someone to help get the word out about Come As You Are. Her name's Gloria Lucas, and she started her own thing because, like Shavice Turner, she felt like the eating disorder community wasn't serving her needs as a Latina with an eating disorder who identifies as chubby. So she created Nalgona Positivity Pride.
Nalgona means a woman with a big butt. And it's also slim, right? So I think that people relate to that, right? That speak Spanish are like, oh, this is familiar.
Lucas's Instagram, also called Nalgona Positivity Pride, has 80,000 followers, and she gives talks at schools and in bilingual bookstores. Basically, wherever she can gather an audience of people of color to share her own recovery story, and how she came to the realization that trying to prove her worth in a society that doesn't value her was making her sick. She says she read that
eating disorders are sane reactions to insane circumstances, you know? But I think that Come As You Are is like everybody from all different types of backgrounds come as you are and talk about our struggles with food, right? Because eating disorders thrive in isolation.
The National Eating Disorder Association's Come As You Are campaign ends March 3rd. Shireen Marisol Meraji, NPR News.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep. And I'm Nat McCleskey. You're listening to Morning Edition on WAMU 88.5. The latest news is just ahead.
오늘은 목요일,
Support for
내일은
WAMU comes
금요일이군요.
from SunTrust Private Wealth Management, whose teams of local advisors help you navigate the life you've built so you can plan for whatever life
새로운
brings.
직장에
Confidence
한
starts
달이
here.
넘게
More information at
다녔는데
suntrust.com/reserve.
뭐 변화된 환경에 스트레스가 좀 더 많을 수는 있겠지만 결과적으로 아주 좋은 선택이었다고 생각합니다. 환경에 익숙해지면 아주 좋을 것 같습니다. 어쨌든 요즘 연수를 받고 있다고 해야 되나? 그런 와중에 주말이 다가온다는 것은 아주 좋습니다. 그렇더라도 주말은
in HD at 88.5 and WRAU 88.3 Ocean City and live at WAMU.org. It's 39 degrees in Northwest DC at 7 o'clock. Good morning. President Trump met with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un the second summit, but the meeting was cut short and the two presidents left without a deal. It's Morning Edition from NPR News.
국무회담 얘기가 나오고 있습니다. 트럼프 대통령과 김정은 위원장이 회담을 조기에 종결했군요. 합의문은 없고요.
President Trump said he had to walk away because Kim Jong-un would not close all of his country's nuclear sites. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Rachel Martin. Critics of the Trump administration were afraid the president would give away too much. So was walking away the right call? We'll ask former National Security Advisor Susan Rice. And after testifying publicly yesterday, the president's former lawyer Michael Cohen goes behind closed doors to answer questions from lawmakers in private. Plus, the Secretary of Commerce blurs the lines on federal ethics laws. It is Thursday, February 28th. Country music star Jason
해결사라고
turns
부르던데
42 years old today. The newscast is next.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump is flying home from
개인이나
Vietnam after his
단체를
summit with North
협박한
Korean leader
횟수가
Kim
거의
Jong-un
500회나 될
abruptly
거라고
ended today 2 hours early. The talks wrapped up with no agreement. NPR's Tamara Keith reports Trump insists the relationship between him and Kim remains warm.
The president's schedule listed a signing ceremony, but in the end, there was no agreement to sign.
We had some options, and at this time we decided not to do any of the options, and we'll see where that goes. But it was a very interesting 2 days, and I think actually it was a very productive 2 days, but sometimes you have to walk.
By Trump's telling, Kim wanted all the sanctions dropped, but didn't want to fully denuclearize. Trump says he received assurances from Kim that nuclear testing wouldn't resume, even though a deal wasn't reached. Asked whether he still wants complete, verifiable denuclearization before lifting sanctions, Trump was not committal.
이런 얘기를 하고 있었다는 것은
Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan says his country will release an Indian Air Force pilot who was shot down by Pakistani forces this week. Pakistan and India have each shot down the other's aircraft in the disputed region of Kashmir as tension remains high. India had demanded the pilot's release. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is appealing to Indians to stand together and fight as one. Sushmita Pathak has more from Mumbai.
Modi said that Indians must not let what he called an enemy slow the nation's progress. He was speaking to his party's workers and volunteers through video conference. Opposition leaders criticized Modi for using the airstrikes for political gain.
Sushmita Pathak reporting. For the second time in 2 days, the House is scheduled to take up legislation broadening background checks for gun purchases. As NPR's Dr. Booker reports, today's bill would expand the amount of time federal authorities have to conduct a background check on a prospective gun buyer.
The measure will give federal authorities more time to complete background checks. Under current law, if a background check isn't finalized in 3 business days, a gun transaction can automatically proceed. This bill will expand the minimum investigation period to 10 days, and it could go longer in certain circumstances. No surprise, most House Republicans are against it. The House is taking this up a day after passing another Democratic-led measure. That bill mandates background checks for all gun purchases, including those made online and at gun shows. Neither is expected to garner much support in the GOP-controlled Senate. Bracken Booker, NPR News, Washington.
Much of Northern California remains under flood warning as heavy rain moves
보통보다 좀
east out
늦게
of the region.
출발했더니
Sonoma County officials say the Russian River has flooded,
훨씬 더 많이
inundated
보이네요.
some 2,000
아마
homes. You're listening to
학교에
NPR.
애들을 데려다 주고 되돌아가는 것
President Trump's
같은데.
former lawyer Michael Cohen will testify before the House Intelligence Committee today. This will be private, unlike yesterday's public hearing before the House Government
가고 있는
Oversight
길은
Committee.
아마
Cohen alleged that President Trump had
지방으로
advanced
하기에는
knowledge of
로컬
WikiLeaks' plan to
길인데
publish information damaging to Hillary
236번
Clinton's
도로입니다.
presidential campaign. Trump says that
사고라는
Cohen is a convicted
워싱턴과
liar. In Nicaragua, long-delayed
워싱턴
talks to resolve
인근에
an ongoing
해당하는
political
버지니아
crisis will
북부를
continue
둘러싸는
today for a second
큰
day.
그
Maria
순환도로
Martin
그
reports the
안쪽에
Nicaraguan government has released scores of political
서쪽에서
prisoners.
동남쪽으로 비스듬하게 내려가고
This was the sound as jubilant Nicaraguans greeted a van full of released political prisoners as they
해가
left
뜨는
Manila jail in
방향하고서
Managua
거의
singing the
일치하고
national
있네요.
anthem. Some prisoners waved blue and white Nicaraguan flags. It's estimated about 100 people, mostly elderly and sick prisoners, were released, but they'll remain under house arrest. Freedom for political prisoners was one of the demands of the opposition, whose representatives met behind closed doors on Wednesday with envoys of Daniel Ortega's government. In a statement issued after Wednesday's session, both sides said they'd agreed on 9 of 12 points as a roadmap for further talks. For NPR News, I'm Maria Martin.
Officials in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo say assailants attacked a medical center treating Ebola patients on Wednesday. They set fire and traded gunfire with security forces. It's the second attack on a Congolese Ebola clinic in a week. It's NPR.
And you're listening to Morning Edition on WAMU 88.5. I'm Nat McCleskey with Regional News. Pedestrian deaths are on the rise in the Washington region and across the nation. WAMU's transportation reporter Jordan Pascal has details.
2018 is set to have the highest number of pedestrians killed since 1990. More than 6,200 people in the U.S. were killed while walking. Virginia, Maryland, and D.C. all saw increases from the previous year. That's according to a report released today from the Governor's Highway Safety Association. The report cites more people walking, inadequate pedestrian infrastructure, and more large vehicles on the road. D.C. and several surrounding jurisdictions have committed Division Zero plans, a goal to eliminate roadway fatalities. The district hopes to reach that goal by 2024, but fatalities have increased since the initiative was announced in 2015. For WAMU, I'm Jordan Pascal.
차도 옆에 있는 인도를 걷다가 이제 차에 치여서 죽는 사람들의 수가 꽤나 되는 모양입니다. 정도는 저쪽에 있는 정도. 여기 이제 사람들이 더 많이 걸어다니고 어떤 지역에서 그 다음에 예전보다 대형 차들이 많이 다녀서 사고가 많은 것 같아요. 워싱턴 주말에 내일 금요일에 약간 눈이 올 수 있다는 여기는 원래